Recruited at a young age from impoverished families, both geishas and courtesans were schooled in fastidious etiquette and endowed with a magnificent sense of style and artistic refinement. Their ability to hold a conversation about the latest play or city scandal was as important as what came afterwards. The courtesans and their clients gathered in neighboring tea houses. They were stylish centers of elegance and wit, much like the London coffee houses of the same period. To properly partake of Yoshiwara's delights was an art in itself.
And the Yoshiwara courtesans were trained to think that they were better than their clients. And if a man wanted to visit Yoshiwara, he had to prepare for it 6 months in prior. He had to buy a fine set of swords. He had to think about what to wear because he wouldn't just go there. The courtesan had the right to turn down her client if she didn't like him, even if he could afford to pay for her. Therefore, he wanted to make a good impression on the courtesan. And then, once he's committed to her, he had no right to see other women. And if he, on the sly, went to see any other person, the courtesan's entourage had every right to punish him. His hair would cut off, he would be made to wear woman's red kimono, and he would be taunted by everyone.
Yoshiwara nurtured its own unique customs, art, fashion, and language. It was a world seemingly set adrift from the harsh realities of life.
Living only for the moment, giving all our time to the pleasures of the moon, the snow, cherry blossoms, and maple leaves. Singing songs, drinking sake, caressing each other, just drifting, drifting. Never give a care if we had no money, refusing to be disheartened, like a gourd floating along the river current. This is what is called ukiyo, the floating world.
But the word ukiyo still retained its Buddhistic sense of this transitory life. Its impermanence, this life's suffering, was still there, particularly for the courtesans and prostitutes, all of whom had some kind of trouble. They were very unhappy, and yet they had to present a very brilliant, gay, external appearance to the general public. It makes me think of the music of blues in jazz world, this indefinable, indescribable pathos, sadness, and languidness. This is very reminiscent of the word ukiyo to me.
For the samurai who frequented Yoshiwara, times were changing. They continued to train daily for battle, but without a war to fight, many became aimless.
Today's warriors, all they talk about is women, eating, and drinking. Actors and dramatic productions. Their fencing practice and lance work are only for personal vendetta. Their study of archery and gunnery are solely for show. Their riding just for ceremonies.
Katsu Kokichi was a mid-level samurai drawn to Yoshiwara, but without the income to fulfill his desires.
I was 21 and penniless. I had no choice but to sell my everyday sword. I had only the clothes on my back. To take my mind off my woes, I went to the Yoshiwara.
They are protesting youngsters that did not fit into the society. wearing oversized kimonos with interesting hairstyle, sometimes skinhead, as a way of protest.
Many of these young men, unemployed and desperate like Katsu Kokichi, lived on the edge of society, often falling into debt, theft, and gangsterism.
When we entered the shrine precinct, a couple of sharp-looking characters sauntered up to us, humming a tune. Without warning, my body spat in the face of one of the men. We then noticed a group of about 20 men, all armed with long, hooked spears. Outside the gates was a reinforcement of some 30 men with pike poles. We were 4 against 50.
For Katsu Kokichi, the samurai code of honor was all but gone. By the middle of the 18th century, the expensive delights of Yoshiwara were no longer affordable for most samurai. The pleasure district took on an increasingly ugly edge.
And the brothel keepers lost their pride. They had become slaves of money-making, and they became much less compassionate. Some of them became very, very cruel and treated prostitutes miserably, and there was some death. Toward the end of the period, the sick prostitutes were not given medication or care, and when they died, they were just thrown into a pit for nameless dead.
Feeling alone, just like floating weeds cut off at the root, I may just follow where the water may take me.
The insular world of the samurai was in decay. To find a cure for its ills, some would begin to look in an unlikely direction. The West now beckoned with new ideas and hope.
I couldn't read a word, of course, but drawings of the viscera, bones, and muscles were quite unlike anything I had previously seen.
Physician Sugita Genpaku couldn't read Dutch, but when he stumbled upon a Dutch anatomy book, he was stunned by the drawings. He had never seen anything like it in his Chinese medical books. In the mid-18th century, Western books, first brought clandestinely from the Netherlands, piqued the interest of many Japanese scientists and doctors.
Sugita Genpaku received permission from the government to order the first sanctioned autopsy of a criminal's corpse for scientific study.
The corpse of the criminal was that of an old woman of about 50 years. The old butcher pointed to this and that, giving them names, but there were certain parts for which he had no names. When we compared what we saw with the illustrations in the Dutch book, it was exactly as depicted.
Dr. Sugita and his friends reflected on how shameful it was that they had tried to treat their patients without a true knowledge of the human body. He vowed to learn more. He taught himself Dutch so he could translate the book.